started my journey with the BSA actually in Cub Scouts when I was in elementary school in 3rd grade with a pack that's local here, Pack 69. From there, I transitioned into the Boy Scout Troop 65 in 1986 through 93 as a youth. At that time, working through multiple high adventures, camping, summer camps, and then attaining my Eagle in 1991. I have a lot of good memories as a scout with the troop. There's good and bad. So I think whenever we're dealing with when you're younger and trying to learn stuff, it gets a little easier whenever you're working through, especially when you start scouts, to progressing your way through the scouting program. I have a lot of good memory. One of my good memories is my Philmont trip. I was fortunate enough to have my dad was one of the leaders. He got to join the troop on that high adventure. So it's cool to make memories to have my dad there and being a leader, and also to 6 of my closest friends that were on that same trip. So Philmont to me ranks pretty high in my high adventure and memories of scouting. My father did help me along the way. He himself is an Eagle Scout and his twin brothers. So really I didn't have a choice of not making Eagle Scout. From day one starting the scouting program, my dad was there to encourage me. It wasn't a forceful part of encouragement, but he was there along the way. He became a leader because he himself was a youth in the scouting program. He wanted to help give back as a leader. So being part of the troop as a leader is kind of like a leader. It's not your dad there, but it was nice there to have him there for extra encouragement if times were kind of tough doing something. But he definitely did stand back and let me grow and learn the program. But on dad's side, he definitely encouraged and pushed along the way to make sure I attained that. So the journey return to the troop was exciting to me. Myself having two sons myself, 2 boys. Pretty much from day one they were born, I couldn't wait to get back in the scouting program with them. Mason, my older son, we did Pack 69 again, the same pack I was in at the time, was a youth, and then joined the Troop 65 back in 2016. That was exciting because it was right at 30 years since I had stepped foot, in that scout hut. A lot of stuff had stayed the same, some changes, but it was still Troop 65, which was very exciting. I think that was exciting for Mason also. I don't think you'll realize that more down the road. That kind of cool that he's the same spot that so many other scouts have come through Troop 65, stepped to the doors of the scout hut, and seen a lot of activities go through the troop. So we joined back as assistant scoutmaster myself in 2016. My son started as a scout, and for a couple years just being part of the program. Mr. Eastman, which was the scoutmaster at the time when we joined, he'd been scoutmaster already 10 plus years. He was very fortunate himself, having three boys go through the program. Each one attained their Eagle rank, which is very exciting. He around 2016-17 decided that around 2018 he was going to retire as scoutmaster. So we talked about it. He asked myself if I would be willing to take over that, and I said yes. Again, with scouting program, it takes a lot of scouts. Scouts are there to have fun and learn, but it also takes good leadership. I was very fortunate that Bob thought I was qualified enough and enough respect between each other, mutual respect, to trust me in the hands of running the Troop 65. I hope the impact of scouting overall, in today's standards, there's a lot of good press, bad press across the world, across the country for BSA. It is still a great program. There's a lot of stuff that it can offer to young men and women now that they might not have access to in their personal lives, of other than school, maybe sports, band, or something like that. But to something they can do that they're not able to do: camping, fishing. It could be high adventures. It may be a little bit of everything, but the program itself, I think if someone gets into it and they actually give it a chance and put some time in, they do learn things. Even if they don't think they are, they're going to learn. Symbol's coming to the meetings on Monday night, which is Troop 65. We meet on Monday nights. It's good to be part of something. Again, not every scout makes the full journey to Eagle, and that's okay. However, when our troop, impacting wise, when I have new scouts start usually every fall, a handful of scouts, sometimes springtime, I would love to have each one of them attain Eagle Scout in the next 4 or 5 years. But the impact of it is to hopefully they learned some stuff, they had fun, they might have had some difficult challenges, however, but they learned to overcome them, and I hope they can take that into future endeavors in their lives. during a scouting career and learning and watching what you do as I'll just example as a youth and adult. A youth of learning and what you're expected to do is usually you have people helping you more. You've got the older scouts helping the younger scouts. You become an older scout, you help younger scouts. It's kind of a little circle of life, I like to call it. That helps younger scouts become older scouts and want to help the younger ones. This cycle just it transitions. And so, example, myself leaving as a youth when I was a youth here, graduating high school, going to college, and not participating in scouts for many years, and then coming back as an adult, it really shows the difference of how important it is for youth to interact with each other. It shows also too the importance of what I've seen with the troop from day one, that it still cycles the same way, helping each other, helping the younger scouts. And I can see that as an adult wise. I think it's hard for my son, won't realize that till one day if he decides to be active as an adult leader in the troop, a troop with scouts, because he just doesn't have the opportunity to see that. I do think that every scout that has come through the program, the Troop 65, become an Eagle Scout, has seen that they've seen struggles, they've seen how to work together with people, and they've also seen how to mold themselves to be a better person. So the impact on that is, I think that they have pride in what they've done. You know, again, so much with school, sports, hobbies, whatever may be going on. It's just something else I think helps well around the youth.
So I first met Grant in about second grade.
He came over from England from his dad was doing some sort of business stuff, and that's why they came over.
We did Cub Scouts together to start off, and we knew each other through that. We went to the same school. We didn't really know each other, but through Cub Scouts, we started to get to know each other better, so we became friends at school.
He was a year late to Cub Scouts, so it was always funny watching him walk around with the blue Cub Scout uniform with one patch missing. We used to have the ranks, Tiger Cub or whatever. He was always missing one of them.
Our friendship started in Cub Scouts because we just kind of got along well. I guess we had some of the same interests, and we started talking. We were at the same school, even though I was at the same school with some of the other people in the pack. I didn't really get along with them as well. But I did with Grant. I don't know what really made us friends in particular, but it just kind of happened.
Near the end of our Cub Scout time, we started doing things more like Boy Scouts, so we started doing packs and things like that. And we created patrols, and I was put in patrol with Nick, if I remember correctly, and we were called the Book Club Patrol. I think that was my idea. It was not a good idea.
We went into the same Boy Scout troop together. So throughout that, we weren't really in the same patrol that often. I think only like once. But we hung out together a lot, even though we were supposed to be separated, but we really weren't. So while we didn't like eat together, really, we still talked, became friends, we went on campouts together. We often stayed in the same tent together, and plus our parents all ended up becoming friends as well, and both of our dads were in the troop with us. It was helpful having already known someone in the troop. That allowed me to better spread out with other people. I've always find it helpful knowing someone in a new environment, and then that helps me get to know other people better. So we just had so many memories throughout. We all went on the same campouts pretty much. And then we just became closer and closer friends as time progressed.
Okay, so fun story. Others may recount it differently because they're incorrect. So one summer camp, I was doing merit badge. It was wilderness survival.
So they had to make their own tent out of nothing and survive in the wilderness, even though it was only a few hundred feet away from the camp. The rest of us.
I built it was a lean-to A-frame, something like that. And we covered the roof in leaves because we were expecting a little rain that night. We didn't get it, but we were expecting it, so we covered it in fresh leaves, and we had it all interlayered. And late into the night. We were all tired. We had all gone to bed. We stayed up pretty late. Myself and a few of the other guys who were doing it around a campfire. We were just talking, and we had seen some deer in the area earlier that day. We chased them around and called them dinner. It was funny. It was kind of an inside joke. Probably should cut that part out. Went to bed that night and I was exhausted, passed out for a little bit, and I think it was like 1 a.m. I woke up and I turned my flashlight on because I heard something above me, and right in my face, like a foot away, was a deer.
And so at around, I think it was 3 or 4 a.m., like the whole camp woke up to some scream, and we were all confused as to what it was. We all ended up going back to sleep. And in the morning, we found out that Grant had encountered a deer. It came right up to him, and I mean, obviously, like
every manly person would do when they have a demonic looking deer a foot away from their face, I perhaps raised my voice very loudly in a scream. And when I returned that morning to the camp after completing the night in our shelter, the entire camp heard it a mile away, and everybody was curious what that shriek was. And it very quickly, everybody found out that it was me.
Through that, we just saw the story, made fun of him for it for several years onward. We still do, but yeah, impressive memory of him and of what it's like to go camping, encounter a deer. We had a lot of those at that camp. But, you know, being in the wilderness, animals everywhere, it's bound to happen sometime or another.
I guess when I was 3 years old is when I became obsessed with horses. I was riding in utero, actually. My mother was a horse person, my father, and generations before that. So it's just kind of in my blood. And I'd have to say at 3 years old, I used to escape the house and go and climb the fence and jump on one of my parents' horses. The connection I have to my horses is like if I were to have real children. It's as if they were mine by birth, is how I feel the connection with them. It's kind of hard to explain for people who don't necessarily have a connection with animals like I do, but I can just look in their eyes as if I'd look into a child's eyes, and it's powerful. I think with the horses and being outside, what I love the most is we're outside all the time. Doesn't matter if it's raining, snowing, sleeting, hideously hot like it is right now in Texas. But being outside and being in nature, you hear the birds chirping, you hear the dogs barking, you know, whatever, and it's amazing. It keeps me grounded. I have a job, you know, quote unquote, a real job as well, that I clamor to be outside when I'm done with that. So I come out and see the horses even if I'm not riding, and we come outside and I graze the horses, my feet are on the ground, sun's on my face. It's amazing. I'd have to say one of my most poignant experiences with my horses was my very first horse show, when as a kid, you know, you're really trying to find your way, you know, what's extremely important. You know, maybe it's your English class or maybe your sport or whatever. And when I went into the horse show ring and I have that deep connection with my horses, in this instance, it was my pony Digger, and we were at Martier Farm in Argyle, Texas, and it was out in this open field, and that pony was the biggest little shit ass ever, but we jumped all the jumps, we ran around, people clapped. My parents were extremely proud. I was extremely proud of myself. And I would have to say that from that point forward, that exercise, that connection with the animal, that level of accolade in terms of doing something for which I was extremely proud of myself and people were proud of me, I would have to say is one of my most important experiences with my horses.
Now and Then is a project that I came up with about 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more. The concept is that I establish a series of sculptural installations along the path of totality of the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. So in April 8th, 2024, which is about 7 months from now, there is going to be this eclipse of the essentially of the sun. And my idea is to do a series of installations along this thing, which is called the zone of totality. And that zone of totality is about 50 miles wide. And it traces a path from essentially southwestern coast of Mexico on the Pacific Ocean. It crosses into the United States in a place called Del Rio, Texas. And then it arcs basically northeast across the United States, exiting the United States in the state of Maine and a place called Halton. And then it basically goes across northeastern Canada, and then it just exits into the Atlantic Ocean, where it dissipates. Now, as far as like my idea for this project and how it came to be, in 2017, on August 21st, there was a total eclipse of the sun that actually transected across the whole of the United States. It was very unusual. It actually entered the United States in Oregon, and then it traveled in an east-southeasterly direction across the United States, exiting over the Atlantic Ocean at Charleston. And on April 21st, 2017, I decided that I was going to do a pop-up installation, which was going to be in South Carolina. South Carolina is not too far from where I live, because I live in Savannah, Georgia. I teach at the Savannah College of Art and Design as a professor in the School of Foundation Studies, and I'm a practicing artist. I've done environmental-based installations for about 20 years. Up until 2017, though, all of the installations that I have completed have been connected essentially with water. So they've been really water-related, and also terrestrial and hydrological. So essentially installations which are engaging forces of nature that are connected essentially with air and water. At the same time, these installations that I completed up to 2017 also did engage the sun, which is, in terms of physics, is actually called heliophysics. In 2017, when I heard about this incredible event that was going to happen, and it was going to be close to Savannah, 100 miles away, I came up with this idea and essentially created a pop-up installation next to a field in a place near a place called Ellery in South Carolina. And I drove up there at 2 o'clock in the morning. I discovered the exact location that I wanted to do my work. I did my research. I knew that the shadow was going to be approaching me from, in that case, the west-northwest. And so I set up my, my installation, which was essentially a couple of panels and with reflective materials on them, gold leaf. And essentially these panels they're really there to capture the effects of nature, which I'm very interested in, because to me, the effects of nature are things which partly are connected to our life on the planet. They're connected to so much of how we survive as living organisms on this planet. But also to me, nature is something that fills me with a state of wonder, a wonderment. And so this very unique phenomenon of this total eclipse was just something which was just, it was like a wonderful opportunity. It was like a gift. Of course, not just a gift for me, but a gift for everybody who could see it. And out of that experience, I started to realize that perhaps as an extension of what I already had started to think about in my art practice, is that our experience of nature, our relationship with nature is very, very important. Now, of course, some ways I'm saying something which is very obvious. Of course, it's important. But the thing is actually, we have a very, I guess you could say, as human beings, our relationship with nature is always changing. And of course, we're living in a time now, it's post-industrial, and it's actually, of course, it's postmodern, but we're also in the age of technology, the age of the internet. And actually, the advent of the internet has significantly, profoundly, irreversibly changed the way human beings connect to nature, because now when we experience things, we always have our cell phones on us. If I was a kid today, I would never experience nature in the way that I experienced nature not so long ago. I'm not that old. And actually, when I grew up and I was, 20 years old or 10 years old, it's not that long ago. But there is a profound difference now. And one of the things that I'm interested in, apart from just the idea of the wonderment of nature and the beauty of nature, is how is that changing relationship, our emotional, our spiritual, our practical relationship with nature, how is that affecting the way we behave with nature? So there are many, many things that are driving my practice as an artist, but specifically which drove me to come up with this idea of to take on a very significant project, which is to install a series of sculptures along the path of totality. Initially, I was thinking I might actually even engage in Mexico, possibly in Canada, but of course, it's about 2,200 miles from the border of Mexico with the United States up to the border of the United States and Maine. So at this stage, I am really just focusing on doing, I have at this stage 6 sites where I have been given permission to do these installations. This is definitely a work in progress. And I'm discovering many, many things in this process that I might have thought about a little bit, but levels of engagement and interaction and discovery and learning and collaboration that I really, in some ways, while I might have expected them, they're much more complicated and so on than I could possibly have imagined. One of the things that's interesting about doing a project like this is that a project like this takes a lot of time. And of course, this, I guess you could say I'm in the middle of my career as an artist. I'm still growing a lot and discovering a lot. So when I started off the project, I didn't really understand necessarily the complexity of the project. So one of the things I'm discovering certainly is that I've chosen to do something which is very ambitious. So I've had to draw on resources that I haven't necessarily had to draw on before. One of which is to be extremely organized in my business practice, and obviously as a teacher, that's a very serious occupation. But this project is like a whole, it's like a whole job, you know, in a sense, and it has a long duration. So it started. I really started seriously working on this project about a year and a half ago, and so I need to be very mindful of organization and sequencing, and a lot of outreach and communication, of finding people who will not only support me in terms of giving me permission to do work, but also actually that I can legally do these works. So actually, there's a lot of collaboration which has been involved in this project. And although I have done collaboration before, never to the extent that I've done with here. In terms of discovering about myself, I think, you know, I am discovering something which I suppose I've always known, which is I really am interested in all sorts of different people. The United States is a very wonderful, you could say, a tapestry or mix of different people, different occupations. The thing that's so beautiful about the eclipse is that it's not owned by anybody. And though certainly there are a lot of towns and cities that are gearing up for this because it has a tremendous commercial opportunities, it's also a challenge. Tens of thousands of people coming to some of these locations, for example, Indianapolis, where I'm going to be doing one of my installations, Vincennes, Indiana, Cape Girardeau in southeastern Missouri, Del Rio, Texas, which is right next to the Mexican border, northern Maine, Holton, which is really out in the back of beyond almost, and they're expecting thousands of people. And I'm learning a lot about how complex it is for people who are essentially people who are responsible for maintaining safety and so on and so forth. You know, how are all these people going to be taken care of? Where are they going to be fed? How are they going to be housed? I'm learning a lot of very practical things about what happens when you have such a kind of grand amount of interest for something that is very, in a sense, random, just a path of a moon shadow crossing the United States at 1,000 miles an hour, roughly for the duration of 2.5 hours from the time it goes across from Mexico to northern Maine.
I think I got inspiration for the outdoors when my family would take trips, and we did driving vacations. I was probably from 8 to 12 years old. We drove to the Grand Canyon and different parts of Colorado, Montana, different places like that. And my dad, I always had a desire to get out and do stuff, but my dad was just driving to place to place, and then but he never let me get out and explore. And so it just I kind of tucked that in the back of my mind that someday when I got old enough and could take my own vacations, that I would go back to those places and do that. So that's kind of where I guess, inspiration started, is actually seeing the great outdoors, a lot of the national parks. And then when I was in college, I worked at a Christian sports camp in Arkansas, and some of the guys I worked with, they taught me how to. I did my first rock climb. I learned how to rappel. We did a ropes course, and I just fell in love with those kind of adrenaline type activities. And so then when I went back to college, I took a rock climbing course, and then we went to Enchanted Rock down in Central Texas, and I got more into rock climbing at that time. And so it just kind of grew from there. For backpacking specifically, I was sitting in a dentist's office waiting
to see the dentist, and I saw a backpacker magazine. I had never heard of that, and I started flipping through, and they were talking about different backpacking trips you could take down in the Grand Canyon. And so that was our first backpacking trip. I got together a couple of guys and we planned it out, and so it was a progression. I did little bits here and there, and then when I got actually out and got my own job and could afford to go places, then I was a teacher, so the summers were free. I could go out, and so we just started going to different places, usually in the mountain west. Anywhere where there are mountains is where we were drawn to. So we did backpacking, some hiking, climbing trips. It was kind of a mixture of all of those. Oh man, I tell you, that's been one of the biggest blessings in my life, is to be able to do that with my family. My wife had never been camping, never been really hiking or anything, and I don't think she's ever loved it, but we had two boys, and she had to learn how to be a boy mama, and so she knew that they needed to be active, and she just wanted to be along and be with us when we did all that. So I took the boys on an overnight backpacking trip, probably when my sons were 4 and 7, and so we went backpacking in New Mexico, and my son had to get over that he had never pooped in the woods before, so that was a big deal. He didn't really, I don't know what to do, and and so trying to teach him that, but my youngest son is the one that really enjoyed it more than anybody. He just enjoyed the affirmation. We were climbing the highest, Wheeler Peak, which is the highest mountain in New Mexico, and he was 4 years old, and we kept passing these people, and no, he was 5 actually at that time, and everybody's asking, "Oh, how old are you?" And he just felt affirmed, and all these people were amazed that this little kid was doing this hard thing, and so that was kind of a test run, and so we did that, and then we went to Colorado over the next few years and started climbing 14,000 foot peaks, and then finally my son got to a point where we had probably a dozen or so under our belt, and my older son, it was okay to him, but my younger son really, really liked it. And so we kind of hit a point where we was like, hey, I bet we could do them all. And so that was specifically for he and I. Well, and along the way, he was diagnosed with Crohn's, which was pretty rough 1 year before he got diagnosed. And but he bounced back from that, and just the fact that he could overcome a disease that I don't know anything about it, but it doesn't go away. It's with him for life. Similar to diabetes, but different. It looks differently. But even with the disease like that, he was able to be active and be in the outdoors. And so that was just a good father-son time for he and I to get out. And so we ended up climbing all 54 or 58, depends on how you count them, 14,000 foot peaks. And we completed that journey when the summer after his senior year in high school. And so that was probably a really special, we shared a lot of memories on the trail, on the mountains, and in the truck driving from trailhead to trailhead. And we ended up, usually 2 to 3 weeks every summer, we just lived out of my truck in the mountains, and that was our life. And my wife and my other son went along. They probably, over the years, they did probably 15 to 20 mountains with us, but they didn't love it like my younger son did. So, but that was a real special time for us. There were several special moments, but one with my son in particular. There was this mountain called Sunlight Peak, and it was in the book that talks about all the different 14ers. The final move on that summit is the hardest move on any of the mountains to get to the top. And he was 10 or 11 years old. I don't remember which year it was, but he was a small kid, and he had to take a big step, probably like 3-4 feet, but kind of up. And it was a stretch for a grown man to do it, and he couldn't do it. So we roped him up for safety, but I had to climb up. I had to straddle the big span to get him from the lower boulder up to to the higher boulder, and then I had to lift him up, and I wasn't roped in, and there's probably an 800-foot drop on this side, and so I had to lift him up. He couldn't get it on himself. Lifting him up onto the rock, and we've got pictures of him. He was scared to death, but he wanted to do it. It was a voluntary. I didn't make him, because there was a lot of other people there that were with us that didn't make those final few steps. But the coolest part was when we were coming down, it was just awkward for me I couldn't set him down, so I had to get down below, and I told him, I said, all right, Philip, I'm gonna hold on to your harness, and I want you to jump. And he's like, his eyes got real big, because you have to jump down that 4-foot span and hit a landing about 2 foot wide, and not overshoot it or undershoot it. And of course I was helping him. I mean, I wasn't gonna let him fall, but still scary. And because if you overshoot, you tumble down the mountain on the other side. And so he just went. He trusted me, and that was just made me feel proud that, you know, a young kid doing something that 10 adults over here were afraid to do, and he did it, and just trusted his dad. You know, so that was kind of a cool moment. And that was one. I've had lots of cool times. I helped a friend of mine who was, I think he finished all the 14ers when he was 72-ish, and for him that was a big deal because he had saved all the hard ones for last. And so it was fun helping him. Not that he needed a lot of help like my younger son did, but it was just special to be with him when at that age, and he's an inspiration to me just to be active for that long in his life, just to be with him through that part of it. And then after his last mountain, we had a big party and celebrated, and that was a big deal.